Hello my friends, welcome to the metal shop. It's kind of late here, so I may be a little quieter. The rest of the house is asleep. So this video I'm going to try and dispel, dismiss 5 myths about the venerable Floyd Rose tremolo system. Here, some very common misconceptions and stuff that the average player doesn't really know about this great tremolo system. This is it's a mutt, but this is it's kind of a funny story. This is a second that I bought directly from Michael Charvel, so kind of like a generational thing. Eddie Van Halen brought his Frankenstein body as a second from Wayne Charvel. I brought this from Michael Charvel. Kind of neat. And I had this neck back in the days when you couldn't get Strat head Charvels. There was a Jackson employee that was making necks on his own, kind of on the side, and I will not name this person, but this has the same neck, 1 3/4 nut as a San Dimas Charvel, and this is by far my favorite neck. This is my treble guitar here. A lot of talking tonight, so just bear with me. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your springs and your spring orientation here. And what started this was, there's a video, and this guy's a well-known, I'm going to call him a guitar repairman. He's not a luthier. He's a guitar repairman. Has a pretty popular channel on YouTube, about 150,000 subscribers. Not a luthier. To me, a luthier, you can build a guitar from scratch, from chunks of wood. Or, you could remove a fretboard, put a fretboard on, stuff like that. This guy's not a luthier. He's a guitar repairman. But anyway, and he hates the Floyd Rose. He hates working on them. He hates them. And so a little piece of advice here, my friends, don't ever bring your guitar to a tech that hates the Floyd Rose. Obviously, if you have a Floyd Rose Trem, find someone else. These guys, if they don't like them, they don't know what they're doing. And I'll tell you a real quick little story about this guy. And this goes back to a few years, I can't remember. But he was putting a Floyd Rose on a Stratocaster or whatever, and the block was too short. It had a short block, like for a recessed trem, and the springs wouldn't reach, and he's in there routing and gouging, and the chisels are out to make the springs touch this shorter block, and he got roasted in the comments. Like, dude, just buy a bigger block. You ruined that guitar. So that's the basis of where we're going from. Anyway, guy hates the Floyd Rose, and he's talking about how if you orient your springs this way, it's stupid. You don't know what you're doing if you orient your springs this way. So I'm super nice and constructive. I say in the comments that I have original Floyd Rose literature that shows the springs oriented this way. And I'll reinsert that pic here. Doesn't mean that it's right, but it certainly means that it's not wrong if it's in the original Floyd Rose literature. Anyway, I digress. He tells me in the comments basically to go F off and learn physics. So super classy, super nice guy. And although I don't know physics, I'm not a math guy, I know enough to get by, okay? And basically, let's start from the beginning here. To overcome the tension of a regular set of strings, basically about a 9 to 42 set, somewhere in that range, you are going to need approximately 80 pounds of spring tension to overcome a regular set of strings, okay? So, in my estimation, and again, I'm not a physics guy. I'm not a physicist. I'm not, whatever. Math isn't my thing. I believe each one of these springs exerts about 30 pounds of force. So, bearing that in mind, and that's just a minimal amount of stretch, okay? So, the minimum amount that you can get by, the minimum springs that you can get by with a regular set of springs is 2, okay? Now, you can orient them straight, but it's better if you angle them like this and crank in your claw here and put some tension on them. And this is what this clown, who basically told me to go F off, doesn't understand. doesn't grasp. He basically says, if your outer springs are angled, this spring in the middle is doing nothing. And you just saw how much force it took for me to remove this spring, okay? It's under tension. It's working, okay? It is doing something. The minimum amount of spring tension that you can put on is 2 springs oriented in a straight, and please don't make me take these off, oriented in a straight manner. 1, 2, straight, with enough tension on them to overcome your 9 to 42 springs, all right? 9 to 42 strings. And most Van Halen setups are like this, with the 2 angled springs and the claw cranked way in because you need more tension. And this brings me to the point, to the physics lesson here, which basically states, it's called Hooke's law, and I assume this Hooke guy was a physicist. And here it is verbatim. The more a spring is stretched, the greater the force it exerts to return to its original shape. So, in paraphrased, when a spring is stretched, it has more tension compared to when it is at its resting length, like this one. So, when they're oriented like this, basically, how I look at it is 2 springs straight is your minimum amount of tension, okay? 30 pounds each, 2 springs straight is 60. You crank your claw in, you're stretching those springs out to get to that 80 pounds. That is the minimum amount of tension that you can get by with, and that'll give you a really nice feeling bar, you know, the whole Eddie Van Halen setup. And every Ernie Ball Music Man and PV Wolfgang and now the EVH Wolfgangs have the 2 angled spring setup, okay? I prefer this, it's a little bit stiffer, and I look at this as, if we're 30 pounds, 30, 60, 90, but these being on an angle, they're stretched more, they have more tension, so it's probably in the 100 to 110 pound range. Obviously, as you increase your diameter, your gauge of strings, you're going to need more spring tension. You can get that by adding more springs or by cranking in that claw and putting more tension on all of your springs. And yes, the eagle eyes will notice these are drywall screws. And the funny thing is, when I bought this body from Michael Charvel, I asked him, I was in contact with him via email, I said, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you install the posts? That's why it has the machine screw post, not the old wood screw posts that I prefer. I asked if he'd install the posts, and I think I sent them to him, and install the claw. And he did install the claw with drywall screws. And I think I showed my friend, and he made fun of me, and it was like, yeah, that's the way it came. I'm just going to leave it. Works just fine. So obviously 3 springs oriented in a straight manner with just enough tension on them is going to be in that 90 pound range. Now you angle your outer 2, so you can look at it this way: 2 angled, 3 angled, and then 4. That's the natural progression there. And like I said, 2 springs angled, approximately 80 pounds. 3 springs set up this way with 2 angled and 1 stretched, 100 to 110 pounds. You got 4 springs, and I'm not going to put in 4 springs, but then you have to move them. It's 1, 2, and you skip up to 3, 4, and this space is blank, is about 120 pounds. And you can still work the bar with 4 springs. You put 5 springs on, that's going to overcome any set of strings you have. The Floyd Rose is going to be decked, and you're going to be stuck with that. You don't see 5 springs except for really maybe like on a Fender setup, something like that. All right, I hope that makes sense. But basically, you know, in a nutshell, whatever works for you. There's no rules with this. Put your springs however you want, as long as they overcome the tension of your strings and you like the feel. It's aces. It's all good. This, in the original Floyd Rose literature, shows it just like this. Works for me. This is what I prefer. This provides the tension that I like. I use a 9 to 46 set. It works just great. All my trems are decked. So there you go. All right, let's move on from this. And I'll talk for just a minute about the Floyd Rose 1984, okay? And what marketing that is from Floyd Rose. Because what is it? The Floyd Rose 1984 is nothing but a Floyd Rose original with a screw-in arm assembly, the old school screw-in arm, so it's not the collared arm assembly, collared bar assembly. Anyway, old school 1984 screw-in arm and assembly. So they changed that, okay? You've got plain brass fine tuners on the Floyd Rose 1984. And guess what, my friends? These are brass. They're all brass. The ones on the 1984, they're just plain brass. They don't have this black coating on them. And I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's super coating. It's not powder. I don't think it's anodized. It's Gary Kaler talks about it frequently on his podcast. Check it out, about how expensive this coating is. But you can see these are wearing away. These are brass. So you get plain, uncoated brass fine tuners on there. Fantastic. And they install a big brass block. They install a straight one on the 1984 assembly. This is a performance block, which is actually much nicer than anything you get from Floyd Rose. Has these nice edges. It's perfectly drilled for your springs. This is just a much nicer piece than anything you can get from Floyd Rose. You pay for it, but it's nice. So that's it. It comes with the wood screw posts, the wood screw style posts, as well as an accessory. So the brilliant marketing comes into play with, they charge you more for it. They charge you more for the 1984, and you think, oh well, you've got all these other parts, and what you forget, you don't get the collared bar assembly. So that's a wash. This might cost a little bit more. You can buy this assembly. It's about $25 to $30. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, that's a wash. The big block, okay, it's better. It's a little bit more expensive, but again, you can get these for $25 to $30. So, and you don't get the stock block that this would come with. The fine tuners, you get plain brass. You don't get the coated ones. Again, you get the wood screw post. You don't get the machine screw post. Save your money. The Floyd Rose 84, they're now selling for about $300. The prices have come down to earth. And a regular original Floyd Rose is about $250 for a chrome, $260, $280 for a black, and $300 again for a gold. I mean, if you really want one for that look, then buy the 1984. But essentially, you're just getting a basic old Floyd Rose with a screw-in bar, plain brass fine tuners, and a big block. And like I said, wood screws instead of machine screws. It's a waste of money. It's marketing. It's a gimmick. Myth number 3 we're going to bust. Let's just pull this right back out here. Oh, yes. This was on one of the, I'm not even going to say the platform, but it's on the internet here. And what they're talking about is removing this plate here. This plate between the block and the spring assembly here. And there's guys out there, they're actually saying that they're calling it a shim, which it's not, and they're saying that it sucks tone. This shim sucks the tone away. And if you put a big block on, they're saying this isn't necessary. Well, you can see this is a big block, and this plate is still sticking out plenty, doing its intended job. And what these guys will say, these internet experts will say, is, oh, it's just a shim. You can ditch that. It's not a shim. This is, look up the Floyd Rose nomenclature yourself. This is a fine tuner tension spring retainer. This is put in place to retain these springs and provide, it gives them added support so that they can provide the tension to your fine tuners that you need, okay? The designers, the engineers put this on for a reason. If they could leave it off, they would, because it costs money to put these on, and it probably costs $3, $4, $5 a unit for this plate, maybe even more, to be on there. If they could leave it off, they would have. It's necessary. Leave it on there. This does not suck your tone. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. If I had a guitar and I played it just like this, all things being equal, I have a guitar with this Floyd Rose on it, with the spring plate retention, spring, whatever, the fine tuner tension spring retainer. I played something with it, recorded it. I took this thing all apart, took that thing out, made another recording. You couldn't tell the difference, I guarantee it. But I like to, what Phil McKnight has always said on the subject is, do these things make a difference? Sure, they probably do, but it's so infinitesimally small you're not going to be able to hear the difference. You're really not. If you use any kind of gain, even a little bit of crunch, you're not going to hear it. Leave that thing in place. It's there for a reason. Leave your fine tuning springs, your spring assembly, leave that in place. There's guys on here saying, oh, I ditched the shim and I ditched the spring. There's a reason that's there. In the old days, there was no spring plate like this. The strings hooked into here would provide a little bit of tension, pulling on it, so that you could then fine tune. But I had one. I had a really old Floyd Rose. It did not come with one of these, and it stunk. The fine tuning stunk. It wasn't accurate. It didn't stay in tune very well because the strings pulling on it didn't have enough tension for accurate fine tuning. So they came up with this. They improved it with this. And the guy was saying, oh, I remove this or remove this. And I said, at this point, you should probably just stop, keep removing stuff till it no longer works, then add the last part that you removed back on. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Myth busted. Leave that thing on. Doesn't suck your tone. It's there for a reason. Just leave it alone. They know better than you do, Internet hero. All right. This is going to be tougher to see here. And I talk about this in my videos quite a bit. But if you can see this, the saddles are graduated heights, okay? A lot of people think they'll take the thing apart and they won't keep track of where each saddle goes, but they're different heights. Basically, the low E and the high E are one height, the A and the B are another height, and the D and the G are another height. The D and the G being the tallest, this being the next tallest, these being the shortest. Obviously for your radius. And you can see this with the naked eye. And matter of fact, before I shot this video, I pulled this out and I looked at it and I could see these two reversed. I could see it with the naked eye. And I took them apart and I swapped them. Okay. Basically, if you got out your micrometer and you measured these, the low ones are 9.5 millimeters in height. The next graduated for your A and your B strings are 10 millimeters in height, and the D and the G here are 10.5 millimeters in height, and you can see all of that with the naked eye. Now, if you mess this up, these are marked, but I caution you to be careful. The best thing to do is don't mix them up. Take them apart. If you take this apart, line them up and leave them in order, okay? Because, and I'll get to this, the markings underneath these, and I have a set. I've done this in another video before, but there's a little round mark in there, and there's a stand. So there's these little round markings under each saddle. Okay, and your shortest saddles, this is the most common marking with an original German-made Floyd Rose, okay? So we got to preface that. The lowest saddles they have the circles, and there's no marking in them at all. I don't want to say it's like a zero. There's nothing. No marking, okay? No marking at all. The A and the B have a 2 in them. A 2, okay? And the D and the G in the center have a 3. A little tiny little stamp that's the number 3 in there. And that's how you can tell them apart. I have seen on real Floyd Roses, I've seen hash marks instead of the numbers. A one line, we'll go back to this, 1 line, or 2 lines, or 1, 2, 3 lines. And the way those work, 1, 2, 3. Those are your 3s. I've seen them marked 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3 as well. But again, the most common, no mark. No marks at all, 2 and 3. All right, I hope that makes sense. I want to talk just a little bit about, along the same topic, is per the Floyd Rose website, the standard radii of a Floyd Rose 6-string assembly is a 10-inch radius. And to achieve that 10-inch radius, there's a shim under here, okay? And I don't know if Floyd Rose still did this, but back in the old days, in the 80s and into the 90s, every single one came with that shim in there. If you wanted a 12-inch radius, slightly flatter, the shim would be removed. So all that was available was the 10-inch radius with the shim and a 12-inch radius without the shim. Well, as of right now, this fall, September 2024, Floyd Rose is now offering saddle sets in different radii alongside the classic 12-inch radius. They offer an 8-inch radius, the 10-inch, which is this one with the shim, but no shim. They've achieved it with different height saddles. I should mention that. So alongside the 12, which would be your standard, you can get an 8-inch radius, 10-inch radius, 14-inch radius, 16-inch radius, and 17-inch radius. They're all made in the USA and the North Carolina State of the Art Facility. And what Floyd Rose has promised is that by the end of the year, all colors will be available. You've got black and chrome first. The gold was coming later, but they said by the end of the year, you'll have all of those different radii in all three colors by the end of the year. So that's pretty cool. If you really need to dial it in, it's great for builders. These big dollar builders like Sir, Tom Anderson. I don't know why I can't think of any of these guys. Luxtone, guys like that. All right, and last, we're rounding out the topic here, and this is, and I happen to have gold ones, all gold ones, which is kind of nice here, is the Floyd Rose nut sizing, okay? And a lot of people didn't know this, but there are 10 different sizes, and I didn't know it forever. I thought there was R2, R3, R4, and R5. I thought that was really it, but there are 10 sizes, and there's 11 if you count the 7-string, the basic 7-string, and I'll go over those. I don't have an R1. R1 is a real oddball. It's a 1.5625 inches in width, or 39.70 millimeters, 1 9/16. So that would be a very thin fender, would be all that would fit on. And it's a 10-inch radius for the R1, okay? Next, much more common, and it's right here, is the R2. That's a 1.625 inch width, 41.30 millimeters, also a 10-inch radius. And that is your standard 1 5/8 found on most fenders. Okay, then we move to probably the most popular size of all is the R3. And the R3 is 1.6875, which is 1 11/16. That is your standard Gibson-sized width, 42.85 millimeters. And I should point out that I used to think that an R2 was 42 millimeters, and it's close, it's 41.3. I used to think the R3 was 43 millimeters, again, close, 42.85. Okay, so what's the R4? Well, the R4 is the same width as the R3, 1.6875 or 1 11/16, but instead of I forgot to mention that, the R3, the basic R3 is a 12-inch radius. So this goes with the basic 12-inch radius of your Floyd Rose. The R3 is a 12-inch radius. The R4, the only difference between the R3 and the R4 is the R4 is a 10-inch radius. And I was always told that the R4 was a little bit bigger and it was used for guitars that had binding. And that's not the case. The R4, same as the R3, but with a 10-inch radius. Okay, last in the basic set is the R5. And that is 1.75 or 1 3/4 inches, 44.45 millimeters. 10-inch radius for the R5. So what about all the rest of them? And I'll go through them very quickly. After R5 is the R6, and R6 is the same as the R1, the 1 9/16 width, but it has a recess for a bullet truss rod. So it's going to have a big cutout here to go on top of that Fender bullet truss rod. The R7 is the same as the R2, but again with the recess for the bullet truss rod. The R8 is the same as the R3, but it has a 10-inch radius. Okay, so we're getting complicated here, I know. The R9 is the same as an R4, but it has the recess for the bullet truss rod. And the R10 is the same as an R3, but with a 15-inch radius. So those are very obscure and hard to get. You probably won't be able to get them from Floyd Rose. The only ones you're really ever going to find is R2, 3, 4, and 5. The 7-string is also available, and it's 1.875 in width. All right, so sorry that all you had to do was listen to me run my yap tonight, but I just wanted to dispel some myths that had come up this week. Your springs, you know, it doesn't matter here if, you know, if you want to set them up here. And the minimum amount of spring tensions is 2 straight, okay? The next 2 angled, crank down. Again, there's infinite adjustments. Next 2 angled. The next tension, 3 straight, okay? Next tension after that, 1 straight, 2 angled. This thing's under tension, it's working. Don't listen to these knuckleheads who say you're doing it wrong. You're not. It's physics. Hooke's law states that these outer springs are under more tension and they are they're exerting more force. So this is greater than this. So if you want just that little bit of adjustment, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the high tension springs, the coated ones, do you know how they achieve that high tension? It's pretty simple. It's physics. They're shorter. They are shorter. A standard Floyd Rose spring is 67.5 millimeters in length. The high tension springs are 62.5 millimeters in length. That's 5 millimeters shorter. And the number of winds, and I even counted them, a standard Floyd Rose spring has 39 winds. The high tension springs only have 35. So that's how they achieve that higher tension. They're shorter. They're stretched more. Okay? Where do we leave off? This is greater than this. And this is greater than the 3 spring. So, Mr. Guitar Repair Guy, super duper know-it-all, you can go F off and you can learn physics instead, okay? So let's see, what else? The 1984, don't waste your money on the 1984. It's just a gimmick. It's just, you know, there's a sucker born every minute. And don't let Floyd Rose take your money for the 1984 unless you really, really want that look and those parts, that collection of parts. Maybe it's worth it to you. Removing the fine tuner tension spring retainer because it sucks your tone is complete and utter horse hooey crap. It's there for a reason. Just leave that in place. Don't monkey with your saddles. They're graduated. They are different heights. And remember that Floyd Rose is coming out with all the different radii you could ever need and ever hope for. And lastly, you can remember the little dissertation there I gave on the many different Floyd Rose nuts, or clamps as I like to call them. There are 10 different styles that are available. So you guys that are, you know, guitar nerds, Floyd Rose nerds like me will enjoy this video. Give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Helps me out a lot. Hit me up in the comments what you think. Tell me I'm full of it. Again, there's no rules. Everything that I've said today, some of it's fact, the sizes of the Floyd Rose nut, the sizes of the saddles, and some of it's opinion. Try it out. Try removing the tension plate here. See if it sucks your tone. Try the big block. I love the big blocks, but does it work? Is it confirmation bias? Is it placebo? I'm really not sure. Your mileage may vary, I like to say. Whatever works best for you. There are no rules. Nothing I've said tonight is chiseled in granite. So again, in closing, give me that thumbs up. Hit me up in the comments. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I hope you've found this video useful. Just a little dissertation, busting some myths and dismissing some internet clowns about that don't really know as much as they think they do about the Floyd Rose. I've been wrenching on these things since 1985, my friends. Not an expert, don't claim to be one, but I know a good amount about these tremolos. Love them, have them on tons of guitars, and I just want to share a little bit of knowledge with you. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.